Well, it's Thursday night, 7 o'clock. You're called by Jimmy. Jimmy's the head of security, and he's telling you that the police is about to execute 2 criminals, and he's asking you for a red light or a green light. Before I tell you this unusual story, I want to give you a little bit of background about myself and about where I come from. Actually, I'm the CEO of a 200-year-old rum company. That's a spirits company, based in Venezuela. Our family has been established in Venezuela for quite a long time. My great-great-grandfather moved from Germany to Venezuela and married my great-great-grandmother, obviously. And that family had been there for about 10 generations at that time. And actually, she was the first cousin of Simón Bolívar, the liberator of Venezuela. If we fast forward that to today, the family is still in the same business, in the same place, more or less. Well, the same place, yes. And just for context, families like these have to go around in Venezuela in bulletproof cars, and they have to go with bodyguards, right? Second element of context I want to give you is the political one. As you know, President Chavez has been in power since December of 1998. And 3 minutes already? Since 1998. And he leads the Bolivarian Revolution, which promotes class struggle. Then there's another element which has to do with security. Venezuela is the deadliest country in the world right now. The fact probably is because we have such a corrupt police, such a corrupt judicial system. And anyway, giving you this context, I want to pass on to what happened after that phone call. Of course, I told Jimmy, red light, bring those guys down. What I mean is bring them to me. So after he had to actually pay off these policemen, he paid about $15 so they wouldn't kill them. He brings them to me, and basically I offered them 2 options. The first option was you work for free for 3 months for having done what you did. Actually, a few days before, they had assaulted a guard. They had almost killed him. They took his gun. And the thing I was thinking was, we have to retaliate, but it has to be creative. It has to be different. It can't be with violence. Anyway, they accepted this offer. The second option was to go back to the police. Anyway, they accept the first option. They start working. And after a few days, the gang leader, I think there's something wrong here. Anyway, okay, so the gang leader, one of them was a gang leader, and he asked me if he could include another 2 or 3 friends to work with them. So anyway, I said, well, tell them to come on Friday. That Friday, I was expecting 2 or 3 guys, and what happened is that the whole gang turned up. There were 22 guys, right? So anyway, I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do in this case, right? Well, long story short, I decided to recruit these guys. They started working, because actually what my motivation was, these guys have one thing that I really want, which is their identity. That is the real weapon, right? So anyway, we take them on board, we start working. 2 months later, we're in this meeting, and one of these guys gets up. They call him muñeco. Muñeco means doll, but also it means corpse, right? Well, in gang slang. Anyway, muñeco gets up and he says, this is great, but this is never going to work. Oh, what do you mean? Well, in a month's time, we're back on the street, and if we don't go back to killing, we're going to get killed by the cemetery gang. So I said, well, what if we recruit them? He said, no way. Those are real psychopaths. Those guys are really dangerous. No way. There's absolutely no way of doing that. The only solution is to kill them. So, great. Creative. Anyway, these are some of the faces. But anyway, so I remember leaving that meeting having lost hope. And the story I want to tell you about today is a story about hope beating fear. It's also about what Diane was saying, crossing borders, and very important borders. So anyway, after a couple of days, I was able to put myself back together again, and I decided we were going to do a PowerPoint presentation in what they call the lion's mouth, right? In the heart of this gang. So I told Jimmy, put on your best suit. We're going up there, and we're going to invade those territories. So we start driving up. I remember just before leaving, I asked him, do you have a gun on you? And he said, yeah, no, I've got 2 guns. And I said, no, well, you're going to leave that behind because you're not even going to have a chance to use them, right? Plus, I don't want them to use our guns on us. So, so anyway, we go up this windy road up to the slum. The road gets smaller and smaller until finally we get to the dead end. And you've got all these guys hanging around without a shirt, guns sticking out. And as soon as we're about to approach where we're going to park, you can sort of feel everybody sort of shifting into position, looking at you, studying you. And anyway, what I'm thinking while I'm getting out of the car is take the initiative, move quickly. If not, you're going to be victim right now. Just so you know, in Venezuela, just shooting somebody is no big deal. Anyway, and I thought they knew who I was. Then I found that they didn't. But anyway, we go to this. So we're getting out, and I'm putting together. So I start giving orders to these guys. Help me with the screen. Get me a table. Put this plug over here. Get me an extension cord. And by the time we get the whole thing together, we had about 250 people standing around us because they were saying, "What the hell is going on? Who is this? Crazy guy." Anyway, so we're standing there and we're surrounded. And guess what? What I felt was, well, at least we have their attention, right? So I started the presentation. It took me about 10 minutes to convince them that I was who I said I was, because they said, no, that guy would never come here. Well, anyway, I was able to convince them. The next part was about dreaming. I want you guys to dream. I've come here to make you dream. Let's think about the future of this slum. Let's think about the future of your children. I want you guys to think the kind of car you're going to have, washing machine, TV set, et cetera, restaurant, stuff like that in this slum, right? You can't imagine the place, right? You have to have a good creativity. Anyway, everybody starts dreaming. And at a certain point, I decided, let's cut this short. And I said, you know what? Well, all of that is never going to happen. That is never going to happen. Forget it. And you know why? It's your fault. It has to do with crime. And until crime doesn't lower, that is not going to be possible. And you guys have to lead that change. So anyway, of course, you could feel the tension. And then I said, and the reason I'm here is because I've come to recruit you to Project Alcatraz. I forgot to tell you we called it Project Alcatraz. Of course, when they heard that, they knew their enemy gang was in Project Alcatraz already. So of course, there was almost a face-off there. Finally, I said, you know what? Let's go take me to the gang leader's house. I want to talk to him. I want to try to convince him. The gang leader previously had been shot several times by the other gang and was left paralyzed at his house. So we go up to his house, I explain, and I said, listen, it's your call. If you don't want to do it, you don't do it. But I think it's really stupid not to. So anyway, he sort of thinks about it for a while, and then he says, you know what? Go ahead. Count on me. So we shook hands. I left. One of the things I felt like Superman. Once we got out of that slum, it was like, man alive, man. And you know what that feeling is? It's the feeling of hope, right? And I say this because that is an incredibly powerful feeling. Anyway, a while after, we get this second gang to enter the project. We start working with them separately. Until finally one day I thought, we have to have these guys face off and actually make peace. So I tricked them into one room just before a rugby tournament. I'm just thinking what the next slide is. Sorry about this. Next slide, please. Okay. No, you can move it back. Anyway, so I'm thinking, how do we do this? So actually what we do is we put in the first group, then we put in the second group. You can imagine the guys walk in and they see their enemies as everybody against the wall, so they're like, damn, where's my gun, And so, no, come on, just move in as if nothing was happening. So I explain what we were doing there. I say, we're going to see some games, have some pasta before the tournament tomorrow. But before that, I want to know who has a problem with who. Of course, everybody's looking down. You have the tension. They're not even listening. They're looking at the floor, right? Just totally silent. I said, oh, great. Well, either there's no problem in the room, or there are no cojones in the room, right? I can translate that if you want. So actually, I start pushing them until finally one of them looks up. Patapiche, smelly feet. Darwin, survival of the fittest, right? So he looks up and I said, yes, I do have a problem. Okay, then come up here and say it. So he sort of comes up. These guys are shoulder to shoulder, right? He comes up to the front of the room and said, tell me who you have a problem with. Well, all of them. No. I want to know exactly which one you have the biggest problem with. So he sort of says, you, him. Okay, well, you, please come over here, stand in the front, right? And so I said, I know you guys are courageous enough to kill each other, but are you guys courageous enough to make peace? And yes, nothing like peer pressure, right? So I said, well, shake hands. So they shake hands and it's sort of like that, right? I said, no. I really want you to shake hands. When you shake hands, you're going to shake hands, you're going to look yourselves in the eyes, and you're going to commit to peace. Well, so they sort of go like this, and then you can see them trying to look at each other, and they can't. And it was actually quite cute, seeing these two killers holding hands for a while. So finally, you can see their eyes sort of wandering up, and they're struggling against their, finally, their eyes meet, and you know what happened? There was this reflex. They both sort of went, it's done, right? You know what happened at that moment? There was this energy that filled the room. It was amazing. That energy is hope. That energy at that moment beat fear. It kicked its ass, right? Well, after that, there was like a jubilee. Everybody sort of sprang up from their chairs. They started talking, jabbering, saying, yeah, we have to be brothers. We have to be one family. Well, I don't know why we started killing each other, right? So after that energy spread across the rest of the county. And in about a week's time, we had 6 gangs lining up to enter the project, right? It's not what we intended, but it happened. We've started recruiting gangs little by little, and now the homicide rates in the county, if you see, our county was more deadly than Venezuela, being the most deadly country in the world. And the homicide rate, we're almost at Iraq, so we're going to go on the good track, right? Anyway, what happened there? For me, this is, of course, it's very important. I think we've saved more than 450 lives. But the most important thing are these guys making their dreams come true. I just want one. I'm sorry I don't have the captions in English, but I said, go ahead, let's go with the video. Darwin is the guy who's going to be speaking.
Mayormente nosotros nos pasamos robando, buscando problemas por ahí, pues, entre bandas.
El proyecto Alcatraz en particular es la experiencia de un grupo de muchachos que ha tenido problemas en la sociedad y que han reconocido sus problemas y además quieren regenerarse.
Somos una persona joven, pues no queremos morir tan rápido. Como hay amigos nosotros que se han muerto, uno reflexiona y piensa que esa no es la vida que uno merece.
Gente que vive en la pobreza, nadie hace nada porque a nadie le interesa. Y si la gente de arriba te detesta, hay más gente que quiere que se caiga en tu cabeza. Pero Alberto y Jimmy se están animando, ayudando a los jóvenes para no ser malandro. Por eso las gracias les doy de verdad y le doy mi palabra de que vamos a cambiar. Y ya no habrá más tiroteo, tampoco habrá más malandreo, porque todos queremos tranquilidad para que en el municipio mande la felicidad.
Bueno, antes la gente nos miraba mal, la mayoría de todo, ahora no, ahora ya saben que estamos aquí en el proyecto y nos orienta, pues dice que sigamos hacia adelante, que gracias a Dios nos dejamos de eso y broma, que aprovechemos la oportunidad que nos están dando, que ese, como quien dice, un carro que pasa una sola vez, que no se monte, no lo recogen más.
Well, this is Darwin. He made his dream come true. He wanted to be my bodyguard, but he's actually the Minister of Interior's bodyguard. So he's made it. This guy is called we called him the Forastero. That was his nickname. It's the stranger. When he arrived, he used to be a hitman. He was contracted at 9 years old, trained till he was 11. His first job was at 11, and until he killed his contractors. It was a Colombian cartel that operated in Venezuela. And he knew about the project from Caracas, and he came all the way to enter the project to change his life. He actually changed his life. This guy was incredible. He didn't know how many homicides. He only had counted up to 17 homicides. Then he stopped counting. Anyway, when he entered the project, he did really well. He changed his lifestyle. He was then hunted down and killed recently, but what makes me happy is that this guy changed his life, right? Just to finish, I would like to just state one thing. One thing I have learned from Project Alcatraz is that hope is so much more powerful than fear. It will always win. Thank you very much.